On August 2, 2022, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, landed in Taiwan, defying Chinese threats of a military response. The trip has become a test of how far Beijing will go to deter foreign support for Taiwan. Reuters reported. Chinese warplanes buzzed the line dividing the Taiwan Strait on Tuesday before her arrival. As China's leadership warned against the visit by Pelosi, several Chinese warships have also sailed near the unofficial dividing line. This is just a glimpse of current situation. World is heading towards a catastrophic end very rapidly. NATO versus Russia, China is dividing the whole world into two blocks and adding trouble into already existing crisis more and more. The conflict between China and Taiwan dates back to the civil war between the nationalist government forces led by Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong's Communist Party. The Communists won the civil war and therefore, Mao founded the People's Republic of China. Chiang Kai-shek and what was left of the Nationalist Party, Kuomintang, fled to Taiwan, where they ruled for the next decades. China still considers Taiwan a part of its territory and aims to unify it with the mainland. The Daily Mail stated, China could carry out a surprise attack on Taiwan by turning military drills near the island into a genuine invasion, Taipei's defense ministry has warned in a new report. Daily Mail, December 13, 2021. Russia and NATO's conflict is still burning the world, and Ukraine's situation has already done the immense damage that it seems that it would take decades to balance that out. Abir Itefa, spokesperson for the World Food Programme, said, food prices are already at a high. We're worried that people in the Middle East and Africa could become even more vulnerable if supplies are disrupted. Fuel prices are on a high and countries, especially Europe, is passing through the biggest energy crises in the history. Many countries has issued warnings to the citizens to be prepared for the cold and dark winter, as they would not be able to provide sufficient electricity and heating to all the citizens. That is so alarming. Prior to this crisis, world suffered from the pandemic of coronavirus, whose after effects are still shaking the world. That pandemic collapsed so many economies and social norms. Countries went bankrupt. The example of Sri Lanka is in front of us. Political and economical situation of Pakistan is also very treating. World is currently facing the floods, fires and so many other natural disasters, which seems to feel like the last nail in the coffin. Number 1, hunger. The threat of starvation now faces 45 million people in 43 nations around the globe. Children in hunger needs urgent attention in Africa, Latin America, Asia and the Middle East. Many do not know where their next meal is coming from. Millions are living on the edge of famine and need food urgently. Number 2, conflict. There are now more active conflicts around the globe than ever. Civil and internal conflicts, insurgencies and political chaos, rallies in places such as Yemen, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Congo, Afghanistan, Venezuela, Myanmar, Syria and most recently Ukraine are driving massive displacements of people. According to one report, globally there are now close to 90 million people living in refugee and displacement camps or far away from home, creating stress situation and tensions among host communities, forcing families to take risky steps and dangerous journeys, which often opening up the vulnerable and especially women and children to trafficking gangs and exploitation. Number 3, climate change. Extreme weather is becoming common phenomena as the world warms. Droughts happening in East and Southern Africa and Afghanistan, flash floods in Asia and Latin America, even recently in Europe, and violent wind and firestorms that affect even wealthy countries such as Australia and USA, are destroying homes and livelihoods and creating new vicious cycles of poverty. Current heat wave in Europe and around the globe also affected the food storage. Hot weather dramatically affected the rivers and they began to shrink. Lakes are disappearing. In some European countries, hunger stones emerges as rivers shrunk. Rising sea level also threatening islands and cities situated near seas. Number 4, abuse. Girls and boys, women and vulnerable are facing huge challenges that are deeply damaging their identity and their ability to dream and hopes for a better life. Conflict, hunger, displacement and poverty are pushing them and their families to take horrible and wrong decisions in order to survive. In places like Latin America, children are especially vulnerable to trafficking and drug gangs and sexual exploitation, while around the world 160 million children are now working, the first rise in 2 decades. In other countries, some are suffering from customs and bad traditions to bad atmosphere at home and an environment. Kids are especially suffering from various traumas related to physical, mental and emotional abuses. Number 5, epidemics and pandemics. The spread of Omicron variant of the COVID-19 has revealed the inequalities in access to vaccines around the globe. Poorest nations have received only a little part of the global supply, Wealthy nations gave their populations a third booster vaccine, and some are giving or already has given a fourth shot. These inequalities created the environment for new variants to arise. Such as Delta variant, with more than 5 million people killed by COVID, hospitals and health systems have been overwhelmed. Lockdown measures have shook the livelihoods for everyone, especially the poorest, and especially in countries with no social welfare. But the sad reality is that this is not it. There are so many other epidemics currently in the world having the capacity to grow into pandemic, and world is not prepared for this at all. Know the facts, be prepared, help the world. Let everyone know the danger we are living in. Tell